Wow, what a packed house we got today. Hi, guys. How's everybody doing today? Who's ready for the All-Star game today? Yes, so excited about that. Well, welcome everyone to Front Office Sports today. Of course, if you watch our show on all the big podcast platforms, my name is Baker Machado.
Hello, everybody. I'm Renee Washington. Excited as we are ahead of the 29th MLS All-Star game. We've got a tremendous show coming up for today that you guys get to check out.
By the way, can we give a shout out to DJ Cassandra? Her music has been
Yes.
on fire
Vibe.
today, by the way. It's been great. By the way, of course, we're coming to you live from RBC House for MLS All-Star Week. So a big thanks, of course, to RBC Wealth Management and, of course, Front Office Sports. We have a very packed show, Renee. So let's first, as we always do on our show, dive into some of the big headlines that we're watching. And, of course, we have to start with the most pressing thing that we all got the push notification for a few hours ago, Lionel Messi. Inter Miami stars Lionel Messi and Jordi Alba not going to be playing tonight in the All-Star game. That despite, Renee, the fact that they were both voted onto the roster. Now, Miami did communicate to the league that they would not be traveling or even playing in the game. And we should note that's important because MLS has a policy that states that anybody who is not injured and opts not to play in the game is suspended for one league match. I'm curious your thoughts because, you know, obviously Messi, one of the biggest stars in the league, and it's kind of weird to see not one of the biggest stars there tonight.
I know, and honestly, yesterday at the Skills Challenge at Q2 Stadium, alongside the Austin FC merch and all the great green, were Messi jerseys being sold at the stadium. And so when you just look at the marketing and how the league has really been pushing the debut of Messi in the All-Star game, because last year he missed due to injury, to have the opportunity for him to compete this year, and then he didn't show up to practice on Monday, they didn't have him there on Tuesday, they didn't know what was going on. Messi was not communicating at all with anybody regarding what his status was going to be. And of course, as you mentioned, Jordi Alba as well. But this is a guy that's played like every minute the last 19 games or so for Inter Miami. He's been playing a lot, and he is a little bit older, to say the least. So for Messi, I think it makes sense that he wants to rest. My concern is this the wrong person to have suspended? This is Messi we're talking about, one of the best soccer players of all time. To have him get suspended for a game makes me wonder, will there be a ripple effect, not only beyond for this All-Star game, but other players that want to rest, but instead are recognizing, hey, it's just one game. Is it really worth it for me to play in the All-Star game?
Well,
I only
and
one?
look, Zatlin can obviously attest to that because he was suspended for not playing in the All-Star game, and he was incredibly critical of, you know, the league because of this policy. But also, if you're the league, you want your biggest and best players to be playing in this because obviously you want the attention, you want the ad revenue, you want all that stuff that's coming in with that. But we also know this has been a weird year for soccer because there's been so many games. Messi's been playing in the Club World Cup. He's got obviously the MLS schedule as well. And so the coach for Inter Milan even said he didn't even want his stars to be playing in this game. But obviously, he doesn't have a say in the matter. Obviously, he did at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is interesting. But the game itself will still have plenty of talent that will be out there for this exciting Liga MX MLS All-Star matchup. But it is for Inter Miami superstars. Just not going to be them on the pitch today.
In some non-soccer news, anybody here a Colorado Rockies fan? Yes.
Oh, we do have some.
As somebody from Denver, that is always a very embarrassing thing to always have to ask. But anyway, usually when we do a Rockies story, it's never good. Obviously, the Rockies on pace for the worst record in Major League Baseball history. But they are breaking history in a different way. They signed their first-round pick, Ethan Holiday, to a record $9 million signing bonus. That is the largest for a high schooler and fourth largest in baseball history. Imagine as a high schooler making $9 million.
I just hold $1 million. It's remarkable when you look at the list of names ahead of him because for Ethan Holiday, obviously such a big name when you look at the history of his dad as well as his brother Jackson, the history that he's had in Colorado. And it does feel like for the Rockies, as a Phillies fan, we don't have these problems, but they are looking for something to hold on to. And it's, hey, let's really invest heavily and market Ethan Holiday because he is the guy that you can say, look, we had so much high expectation for him. We're going to invest in him for the future. He becomes kind of that Paul Skeens in Pittsburgh type of move for them. And Paul Skeens is one of those guys that actually had a higher rookie contract at $9.2 million. A couple others in Chase Burns and Charlie Condon. So I do feel like for the Rockies, as you mentioned, on pace to be the losingest team. They were the first in the modern era to lose 50 games as quickly as they did. They need something. They need something to hold on to, and it's right now Ethan Holiday is about it.
By the way, a nice family thing for them. His brother Jackson, who we all know plays for the Baltimore Orioles, had the record for biggest signing bonus for a high schooler just a few years ago, and then his brother then breaks it. Let's move to college, the other side of of NIL, which I think is really interesting. Mike Locksley, the head coach of the Maryland football team, said during ACC Media Days this week that he actually lost the locker room last season. Maryland obviously had a terrible season last year, but it was all about which players were getting compensated and which ones weren't because of their NIL deals. And as a result, he lost the locker room because of that. He does say the recent House settlement now allows him to focus now on the locker room and less on fundraising. But he had this really interesting quote that I thought was funny. He says, "I now have a sign in the locker room that says, leave your Louis belts, leave your financial statements and your car keys outside of the locker room, because in here, we're all going to pay the same price for success or failure." What do you think about this? Because look, this is a whole other side of NIL that we don't really hear about. Players maybe getting upset or jealous that other ones might be making more or less than them.
I think for Maryland, what actually lost the locker room is the fact they won 3 straight bowl games between 2021 and 2023, and then they had a 4-8 season. And when you look at a team that's used to winning and now you are not getting those results, they lost the last 5 games of the season by 14 points at least. So that's also what losing can help lose cultures. But I do think that for any college coach right now, like, I empathize with them because I think back to my experiences as a college athlete and a coach, and it was already difficult enough. Scholarships create divides. Accolades create divides. Failure creates divides. So you add an NIL and transfer portal on top of that, it does add a whole new layer. And I appreciated that he was able for Locksley to say, I need to be vulnerable and transparent enough to recognize I can do better, because he does need to build those relationships. He does need to build that culture from recruiting to performance to training. It's all connected, and he's got to be able to connect the dots in that regard of how even in an NIL era you can get this team, because they did have 6 players that were drafted in the NFL this past season. They had more players drafted than wins. But you're at least getting something positive of getting players to the next level. So what can they, if you're Maryland or any other college coach, how can you build a winning culture in this NIL era to showcase this is the space you want to, the place you want to be for your career to help take that next step to the NFL?
And you mentioned the NFL. Let's get to our final headlines in our main event today. And it's all about training camp and who's not showing up or who is reporting but still looking to get paid. There are 2 big high-profile veteran holdouts still right now. We're talking Cincinnati Bengals defensive end Trey Hendrickson and Washington Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin. Obviously, you have Micah Parsons, who is going to training camp but is still waiting for Jerry Jones to call him back on a new deal. But let's start with the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson. He's in Florida right now. His team started training camp in Ohio without him. He did do an interview yesterday with The Athletic, and he says he has still not received the guaranteed money that he's looking for. Right now, the Bengals only offering 1 year fully guaranteed. He's saying he wants a similar deal to what TJ Watt got, which was 3 and 4 years of guaranteed money. The Browns owner, by the way, Mike Brown, says he's confident a deal's going to happen soon. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for Cincinnati, they're in a really tricky spot because as we have Trey Hendrickson entering the final season of his deal, he's got $15.8 million he's supposed to make in base salary. He is one of the best in his position. And so when you look across the NFL, as prices and extensions continue to grow, and Hendrickson's not only waiting for a deal, but also recognizing he's underpaid, that is the primary issue that they have is he feels like he should be getting the guaranteed money like the Max Crosbys, like the TJ Watts, what they're getting. So I know there's been reports it's been very contentious, but also it's not just him. I mean, Bengals rookie Shamar Stewart has been training with his college team, hasn't reported to training camp at all because he's in the process of trying to figure out his rookie contract. So the Bengals in general need to be comfortable giving out the money to the talent that they believe in to help build their team, because it does feel like for Trey Hendrickson, it's been a long time waiting.
And I know we're in Texas. Do we have Cowboys fans in here? No. Wow.
Yes,
I am
love to hear
shocked.
that.
Well, let's talk, because they'll obviously love this conversation then. Let's talk about Micah Parsons. He was on the practice field Monday. He is, though, holding out. He said he had a conversation a few months ago with Jerry Jones. He felt like they had a handshake deal on a new agreement, but apparently Jerry Jones has not called his agent in months. How does this happen? What happens here?
So Micah Parsons and Trevon Diggs had their own media scrum where they answered some questions regarding this. And I know Micah was mentioning, looking at other guys getting paid must be nice, is what he was saying. And Diggs was also mentioning he's the best player in the league. He should get paid. Now, as again, I mentioned I'm a Phillies fan. As an Eagles fan, I got to switch over sports here. I don't agree that he's the best player in the league, but I can say that he is one of the best in his position, especially one of the best defensive players in the league. So he does deserve to get paid. 26 years old, still on his rookie contract. Another guy in the final season of his rookie deal and massively underpaid. So for Micah Parsons, he's been saying, I want to be in Dallas. This is where I want to play, but we just have to see how this plays out. And I think for him, much like someone like Terry McLaurin, they are those guys that they want to stay with this team, with their respective teams. They just are wanting to get the money that they deserve to be paid.
All right, so we have some guests we're going to bring up here in just a few moments. Obviously, going to talk a lot of stuff about MLS All-Star Week. But before we do want to give a big shout out again. Today's episode presented by RBC Wealth Management, of course, dedicated to providing financial strategies, helping you navigate wealth planning and legacy building as well.
Absolutely. It's time to shift gears and talk some soccer as we welcome in our first guest. We've got the lead play-by-play broadcaster for MLS Season Pass on Apple TV, Jake Zivin, as well as the insider, the man that you are always hearing, Bogues, breaking news, MLS and U.S. Men's National Team insider, Tom Bogert. And welcome, guys, to FOS Today.
Hi, guys. Welcome.
Thank you. How's it going?
Sharp.
I
don't feel sharp next to Jake right now. I don't feel sharp at all.
Straight from here to Q2 Stadium for our broadcast.
So, guys,
I haven't put my makeup on yet, so apologies.
you look good. Guys, by the way, thank you so much for joining us. And before we get into some of the things that obviously impact media broadcasting, let's just dive into the biggest media today, which is Lionel Messi.
collective bargaining is always something that's difficult. The burden is always going to be on the players. Whether you have 1,000 players roughly like we do in our league, or you have fewer or more, it's always difficult to get people, especially in an international league like ours, to get completely all on the same page and then fight for what you feel like is yours. When you talk about growth, when it comes to MLS, just a little bit of metrics for everybody. When Justin and I were coming into the league, the minimum salary was around 28 to 30 grand. So we're obviously astronomically much better than that, but the bottom needs to keep coming up because the top end salaries in MLS are in a respectable place for sure.
Yeah, and I know there are so many conversations around what can be done to raise the financial floor. I know we even spoke with Gareth Bale on our show, and he was mentioning in order to compete with the top clubs and the top leagues, you have to be able to pay your players. With something like a sale for San Jose that's also been brought up recently, or media deals or other aspects, what do you think are the best ways to really raise that floor to get the revenue? Because as you mentioned with the WNBA and other leagues, that has been a sticking point for a number of leagues of how do we generate the money? People always say pay more, but how? What do you think has to happen for Major League Soccer to truly be able to give the salaries that players deserve?
I think that the league has done a great job with the infrastructure, building it up, like the stadiums that we have, Q2 that we're going to see tonight, incredible stadium, TQL, like every stadium that comes in is pushing it, right? Shout out Joe Mansueto, Chicago, they're bringing a stadium to downtown Chicago. So like having New York City come online with a new stadium downtown, Chicago online with a new stadium downtown, like these are going to continue to push MLS forward. But at the end of the day, it's still about the talent. So bringing that youth through, bringing the people from afar, abroad, it's really going to help.
Jalil, we'll give you the last word on this. Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think Justin segued me perfectly. We always be ESP is a real thing between us.
I love
but I think the youth sector, the academy sector, is very much a space where, yes, the owners have heavily invested, and I would encourage them to continue to do so. Because when you look at the best leagues around the world, their academies are popping. And that is the primary way where they can forecast and say, okay, we can make X $1 million this year just based off of what we have in-house from our investments. And we're getting there as a league. You're seeing certain clubs that are going heavy on the academy side, and not just pushing players through for marketing purposes, really developing them as young individuals, making sure that their education is on point, making sure that they're connected with the right people to mentor them, whether it's agents, whether it's players that are of the ilk of those who are represented, or excuse me, sought after in their community, X, Y, and Z, where the young players are 10 times ahead of where Justin and I were when we were graduating from college or being ready to be professionals for the first time. So the more we continue to invest in our youth, I think financially the better off we'll be in a league, and of course, from a product standpoint, the better we'll be.
Yeah, and we've seen that evolution from the draft to All-Star Week to pay. There's so many components of Major League Soccer that are definitely taking major strides.
One more time, I want to give a big shout out to RBC Wealth Management. Of course, we're here for RBC House for MLS All-Star Week. The themes, by the way, of this week have been around wealth and success. And I'm curious, our last question for both of you guys, what does your idea of wealth and success, having played in the league for so many years, having worked on another side of the league for both of you guys, what does wealth and success look like to each of you guys?
Nah, you can go first.
I know it's a tough question.
Well, I'm a finance guy. I studied finance at school, so I've always understood the importance of like managing your money well, and I always bring the athlete perspective to every room that I'm in. So having RBC Wealth Management here, the player aspect is like, okay, we just talked about players making more money now. They got to know how to manage it well, and of course there are agents and managers that come into the space and want to do that for players, but players got to be on top of that. And so I always want that for players, and so the more financial literacy, the more that we can have these types of organizations around players, I think that's going to really get into them.
I think when you talk about the overall history of professional athletes managing their money well, it typically becomes much more of a problem the more money that they got. So for me, and I'm not talking about Mace or any other rapper, I'm talking about for real when it comes to now, the league is in a place where, especially young players, the deals that they're signing, they're unprecedented. So that means I think we need to be proactive in making sure that they understand how to spend that money, how to keep that money, because some of the academy players, they live with their parents, and their parents are able to help them with that. we all know that demographics shed through basically anybody who plays football. So what I would like to see in a utopian world when it comes to football and managing the money properly is as the salaries continue to rise, the younger and younger talent are very well equipped so that they have financial plans going into their professional lives.
Beautifully said.
I totally agree. Let's give it.
Resources are important.
Yes, all right, let's give a big shout out and a big round of applause for Jalil, Anibaba, and Justin Morrow. Guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, we have one more guest coming up for us today, and it's a familiar one that you've been seeing here at RBC House. Let's bring out Leslie Osborne, former defensive midfielder. Last, of course, played for the Chicago Red Stars in the NWSL. She's also a former member of the women's national soccer team, and of course, she's a friend of ours, a family member of Front Office Sports with her podcast, Redefined. Hi, Leslie.
Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
By the way, do you sit on this couch when you do the podcast?
Yeah, and
Oh.
Ariel's not here. I'm just going to sit.
Yeah, take
I
the
was
whole
gonna
couch.
say,
Take the whole
does it feel
couch.
different to be on that other side?
Yes.
So obviously you are part of the ownership team for Bay City FC, and we've been seeing a lot of former players getting into ownership, especially with NWSL. I guess what goes into owning an NWSL team? How did it sort of happen for you?
Yeah. Well, every ownership group looks different. But the one commonality is you have to have a majority owner that is worth an individual net worth of a lot of millions of dollars. But every structure is different. In fact, Bay FC, our team, is the first institutional money that the league had received. So Sixth Street Capital, PE firm, owns the majority of our team, and that kind of opened up the doors for more institutional money to come in. You'll see dual MLS teams that own the Houston Dash and the Houston Dynamo, same setup in Orlando. You'll see Angel City's previous model where they had 80 owners on their cap table, from celebrities to athletes. So really every team's ownership structure is set up a little differently, but you have to have the net worth. You have to have stadium plans and training facility plans that are dedicated for the team. A lot has changed with the standard coming into this league, and you have to be able to put in that sort of investment to keep this league growing at the pace it's growing.
And I know that the NWSL commissioner, Jess Bourbon, has mentioned the hopes of and potential to support up to like 30 to 32 teams and continue to expand the NWSL. I'm curious your thoughts on the importance of, as the league continues to grow and expand and add more cities that have clubs, of also having more voices like yourself and the range of perspective of the ownership of those respective clubs to ensure that it's growing the right way.
Yeah, I think a goal of the NWSL and the MLS is to scale, but being smart with how fast you scale and being able to be equipped with that, with a media deal that can allow more investment dollars, sponsorship dollars. But you can't expand too quickly, but this league needs to grow. In fact, our expansion is going up to 16 teams next year. And
Yeah, Denver.
yeah,
Woo.
Denver Summit named their team yesterday. Pretty cool logo, pretty impressive, but them and Boston will enter the league next year, and we'll have 16 teams. 2 years prior, we paid $53 million, and Denver paid $115 million. So as expansion's going up and our league's growing, so is the price tag. But I think we have to be smart with how fast we grow. And I think it's great to have an end goal, but you look at the MLS now and how it's rapidly growing and how they're getting global stars. It's helping them get to where they're at. We need to continue to attract global talent. We need to try to be the best league in the world. Right now, we're the most competitive. We have the most parity, but it's crucial that we're at this international, aligned calendar. We finally have free agency. We got rid of our draft and our expansion draft. So we're making a lot of movement to continue to try to stay at the top of the league. So everybody wants to come to Bay FC and NWSL.
So I'm curious, how would you assess the relationship between NWSL and MLS? I mean, we see with the NBA and the WNBA, they're trying to find as many synergies as they can. Are there those there for the NWSL and MLS?
I wouldn't say there are a lot of them other than the dual ownerships in certain markets. And I was just talking to Heather Davis, the CEO of the Portland Timbers and Thorns, and she oversees both teams at one period, and that was a lot. And so I think the markets that do have the dual ownership, it has to be set up properly where both the women's and men's teams are getting the same amount of resources, attention. I mean, this game is growing, and I think it's in everyone's best interest to align with the MLS, to do more together. I think if you talk to most players in the NWSL and the U.S. Women's National Team, like Lindsay Heaps being out there last night, They want to be part of this game growing, the global game, whether it's on the women's side or the men's side. And we know as a league and being female former players how important and crucial this World Cup is coming next summer and what that's going to do for everybody. And so it's in everyone's best interest to collab, partner up, support each other. And yeah, if we get more investment dollars and maybe some MLS owners that see the value and want to have a women's team, look at the Warriors and what the Lakeups have done bringing the Valkyries. They paid $50 million 2 or 3 years ago, and now their valuation is $500 million, excuse me. Like, those are the types of owners that we would want to have that see the value in what we're doing.
And as you talk about the growth of the NWSL, something we continue to mention regarding the MLS specifically is how it is trying to position themselves to be the league that people go to in their prime versus being like a retirement league. How do you attract the top players? The NWSL is in a situation that's very similar, where they've had a lot of top talent in the league, but also have lost some into transfers, or also, just some talent still not in the league. As the league continues to grow with 2 new clubs next season in Denver and Boston, as the league continues to grow with media deals and different aspects, how can they continue to grow to attract those players and keep those players in the league? What are your thoughts?
I think the media deal is the biggest part. I think it's so absolutely crucial to what we're doing. I mean, it's going to help fan engagement, sponsorship dollars, visibility. It's going to attract top talent to come play over here. It's going to funnel into the valuations of all the teams, which is therefore going to help the valuation of the league. Hopefully our salary cap keeps getting bigger and bigger. Or maybe one day we're not going to have a salary cap because other leagues around the world do not have salary caps, and that's something that's limiting us. If we pay $1 million to one player on our team, that's going to be less for everybody else. So we have to be able to stay with the global game to be competitive, to try to get these global stars, even if it's a Messi, like coming at the latter part of his career. We want to get people in their prime in the NWSL, and we're going to have to be willing to pay them either from a salary or sponsor.
Well, to that point, even on the transfer side, because it's interesting, we just had a record transfer for the girl from San Diego that just went to Arsenal, Olivia Smith. A lot of people were saying, look, we fall in love with these players. We want them to stay with our teams. This is what we see in all these other leagues. But you have the NWSL commissioner, Jess Berman, basically saying we have to reprogram people's brains because it's good when they're getting transferred because that means there's a demand there. So what's your sort of take on that for people to sort of, love their players but also accept that they might be leaving soon to go to another club?
Yeah, I think it's just part of the global game. And although women's soccer in our country has been an elite and top sport for so long, I still think people are getting used to the global game, and we're actually trying to get more aligned with the global game. And in the men's game, this has been happening forever, and it's getting comfortable and getting educated and understanding the value of having price tags on players. Like, that will allow more things to happen in the future, and I think that in 3 years from now, I feel pretty confident saying that a lot is going to shift and change, and you will see a lot bigger transfer deals and the domino effect that that's going to have on our league.
Well, my last question for you, Leslie, because we had a chance for Justin and Jalil to talk about some of their experiences as former players and where the league is now in terms of Major League Soccer. And I always tell people from my NWSL experiences just how much it's grown. But as someone that's been in the league much longer than I played, but also in so many other roles, I'm curious your thoughts on looking now in 2025, some of the major aspects of the National Women's Soccer League that have grown in comparison to where it was when it started not too long ago, back around 2013 when this iteration was created.
Oh, Renee, I need like 20 minutes on this. Just a few
Luckily, you have a whole podcast coming up right after this.
Can we just do Redefined on the growth of, the NWSL? I mean, even looking with Skims partnering with Love Volleyball yesterday, like Beauty, Sephora partnering with leagues. Like 8 years ago when I played, we were not having beauty companies partnering and supporting our league. That is absolutely massive. So there's that. And then B, I think having former players, Olympians, being involved in the ownership group, being in the front office. I mean, I have former teammates that are now general managers of teams. Having former players and teammates of mine being involved as founders and owners of clubs, that's going to increase the visibility. That's going to increase the credibility. That's going to help influence this game. And I think even at a deeper level, like, we've played, we've done it. Like, we can actually help the business side of, because we've been in their shoes. And I'm so proud of where the NWSL is from 10 years ago when I started in 2013 when that league just started. It makes me proud, but I'm also like, we have so much more potential. And I can't wait for the next 5 years on what this NWSL and what the global women's game is going to look like, because you're seeing it now in the MLS that certain things can happen, and we got to be prepared for it, because we've put in the groundwork, and a lot of people ahead of me put in that groundwork long, long ago.
Leslie, before we get you out of here, there's going to be a live show, by the way, a live taping of the Redefined podcast here in just a little bit. Can you tease or give us any sort of thing of what you and Ariel are going to be talking about in the next little bit?
Yeah, thank you. We're super excited to do more of like a broadcasting panel. We have Jenny Chu and Susanna Collins, two women that have been on the sidelines doing, Champions League pitch sidelines, interviews with some of the top global stars, MLS, everything, and sharing with them more about their story, their perspective, how they've gotten to where they've gotten, and balancing it all, because for all of us that are in this media world, it's pretty crazy and the pressure is high, and being a female too and trying to build out a family and plan a family and all of that comes along with it. So we have a lot of great conversations to be had, and please stick around for that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a bar over here. Get a drink. Watch the podcast. It's all coming up. Leslie, thank you so very much for joining us. Well, that's going to do it for this edition, guys, of Front Office Sports Today live at RBC House here at Anton's. A big shout out, of course, to RBC Wealth Management and to Anton's for having us here, of course. And a big shout out to you guys for joining us here in studio, and you guys watching us live on YouTube as well. You can watch Renee and I weekdays on Front Office Sports Today everywhere you get your podcast. Everybody have the best time for MLS All-Star Week. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Have a good rest of your night. Bye. Thank you.